Celestia, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me here today on such short notice. You know, you've done absolutely amazing, especially with gaining your business from the ground up. And you've not only done that, but you've made such a success of it. And you've also made a success outside of it as well. So, yeah, thank you
Thank you very
for
much.
accepting the invitation. You're very inspirational to me and to many others as well, because of all the work that you do with mental health and all the inspirational quotes that you put out on the internet, especially with your Instagram and other social websites. You know, we think you're amazing. And just to start things off, could you tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah, well, to start off with as well, I just want to say thank you for them kind words. It was very nice of you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, when I was 14, I got lost in the wrong crowd, and that stemmed from my mum and dad splitting up. Unfortunately, they ended up going their separate ways, and that kind of found it quite difficult for me, because when you're at home and you're living with your mum and your dad, for me, my dad was the stronger character. So my dad was able to do things and tell me things that I maybe should have done, but my mum was sort of really easygoing and she let me do what I want to do. And obviously for me, that wasn't the best advice when you're a young person. You are, it's good to have, it's good to have
discipline.
Exactly that. It's good to have certain discipline around you when you're young, because you can easily go astray.
Yeah.
And what happened for me is I hung around with a set group of girls at school up to year 9, and these girls were really nice. Well, I thought they were. And then one day I had my hair cut short when I went into school, and they all took the mick out of me. They said, "You look like a lesbian, you look like a mushroom head. We don't want to hang around with you. We don't want to be your friend anymore." And it really hit a nerve for me, because I'd hung around with these girls for the last 3 years, and just because I had my hair cut short, they didn't want anything to do with me. So I sat in the toilet on my own for a week at school, every lunch break, and I just kind of got to the point where I was like, I need to make some friends, because otherwise I'm going to be sitting in the toilet every lunch break for God knows how much longer. So on the Friday, I remember just coming out of the toilet, and I just was like walking around like a bit of a loner. And the only people that would really let me in their group were the chavs, as we call them at school. Now, the chavs are people who, they're not horrible people, but they are people who are not really concentrating on doing the work or getting things done, really. And hanging out with them, my habits started to change and my personality started to change. I went from this very sort of normal schoolgirl that was getting okay grades to somebody who wasn't listening, wasn't turning up, wasn't doing anything that I should have been doing, really. And what happened for me was, the first thing that happened was I started smoking cigarettes. Now, it happened so easy that it was just simply sitting at a bus stop, and the guy next to me was like, "Oh, try this fag. Come on, light this fag up." And when you're young, you can be very easily influenced. So I sparked up the fag, and then I had another one, and then I had another one. And by the time I'd had 5 or 6 of these cigarettes, I felt like I was then addicted to these cigarettes. And then I just kept smoking and smoking and smoking like a chimney. And then during that time as well, I was hanging out with people outside of school who were predominantly older than me. And I was forming relationships, sexual relationships, and also friendships with these people. And very unfortunate that they all had access to drugs. And then at age 14, little old me, or little young me, started taking drugs, and I started stealing, and I started going to nightclubs, and I started to drink bottles of vodka every weekend. And these habits were consistently then being driven into my mind, body and soul every single week, months and months and months and months and months. And eventually you don't realize what you're doing to yourself. You think it's fun, you think you're supposed to do that, and you generally don't see what you're not only doing to yourself, but what you're doing to everybody else around you. And for me, because my mum and dad are split up, my mum was a very soft character, and she didn't have the strength to really stop me from what I was doing. So leaving school, I left school with no GCSEs and really bad health. And for me, it was just kind of like I've basically wasted my whole childhood of from the 3 Pacific years. I basically completely wasted it. Why other people were walking out with great grades. And even on prom, I turned up to the party and they wouldn't let me in because I was in the chav group. So we weren't allowed in the prom because we were too naughty to be let into the house. So we ended up having our prom like in a park sitting on the floor with bottles of vodka. So you can tell the kind of person I was and the person I was turning into as well. Now, when I left school, I very, very fortunate that I actually got a job straight away. Can you believe it? Now, this job was working at a hairdresser's, and I walked in with my mum and I got the interview. And I think I got the interview not because I had qualifications, but because I was so out there, like, hi, you're right, that they fed into my energy. But within that energy, I didn't have any intelligence. I just had energy, and they fed into that. A couple of days into the job, I didn't turn up. And then I didn't turn up again. And then I was late. And the thing is, I've been doing that through school. So there was nothing in place for me to be on time or to turn up. I wasn't used to that. And after a week, I lost the job. So losing the job, that was it. I was good to go because I got to lie in again. And then, very fortunate, my mum said to me, would you like to come and work at our pub? Because my mum owned a pub, and by that stage, we'd already had it for sort of 10 years. She said, look, let's get you on pot wash. Let's get you out the back doing a few bits. I was like, okay, cool. We'll get onto that. So I started doing pot wash. And then as the years went on, like a whole year, I kind of traveled through the business. So I did pot wash, then I did bar work, and then I did waitressing. And when I got to the bar work and waitressing level, I was still a druggy, alcoholic thief with no morals or no respect for anyone or anything. So at that point, I wasn't only doing everything I was doing, I was also stealing out of the tills at my mum's pub. And you can imagine the trust that I was breaking every single time I was doing that. It was just because I had the keys, and because I could work the till, and because I was close to the family, I got away with it. And the more I got away with it, the more addictive it would get.
Yeah.
And what happened was I used to get the money and I used to go nightclubbing with the money. I used to go shopping with the money, and I used to spend it really willy-nilly on doing anything to please myself. Now, after that had all kind of gone on, at the same time, I was drink driving at 90 miles an hour. So you can imagine drink driving at 90 miles an hour at 5 a.m, coming back from a nightclub. It was really seriously, I was living right on the edge of life all the time, but I was thinking that I was just doing the best thing at the best time. And that's how I was at that specific moment. Now, when you get to the point of doing the drink driving, I then eventually, thank God, like literally, I lost my license drink driving. And at the time, obviously I'm gutted, I'm upset, I'm crying, like I've lost my license for 2 years, but it was an absolute godsend. It was the best thing that could ever happen to me. So from that moment, I said to my mum, like, I can't live at this farmhouse anymore because I can't get anywhere. And I don't feel like anything's, like what's happening for my life, like nothing's happening. So my dad had some properties in Leicester. And at the time, obviously for the last 7 years, me and my dad, we had not really had a relationship ever since I was 14. So for the 7 years that we didn't have the relationship, they were the 7 years from age 14 to 21 that I was completely off the rails. Now, reaching out to my dad for the first time and saying, "Hi, Dad, do you have anywhere I could live?" Definitely was a bit like, what do you want? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he could see I was in a bit of a sticky situation, and he could see that I generally really needed his help. And I'm very, very lucky that he put out his arm and said, "Okay, I've got a very small bed sit in Leicester. I'd be willing for you to come and live in it and see how you get on in it." So I moved to Leicester, and I was straight back in the wrong crowd, drinking, drugs, smoking and stealing, because that was the way my brain was working. And at the time, I thought to myself, what am I going to do in my life? Because I might be living in this flat, but I've got no purpose. I've got no real vision for anything. And I'm still at this point a very, very selfish person. Now, when I left my mum's house, I didn't leave empty-handed. Now, this was the lowest point in my life. And this is something that today I wish it never happened. But I tell my story to inspire people and to pray and hope that if anybody's watching, that they don't get to go or steep as low as I did.
About learning.
Exactly. So when I left my mum's house, I decided to fill the car up with all her antiques. I basically stripped down the house thinking that she wouldn't notice. And when I got to the flat in Leicester, I piled out all the antiques underneath the bed, and I thought that I could pawn them and make money on it. Now, as the months went by, I got a phone call from my mum, and she said, "I've just been in your old room, and I've just pulled out an antique wrapped in a scarf out of your wardrobe. What is it doing there?" And at that time, obviously, I'm like, I forgot about it. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about it. So I kind of aired it off and brushed it off. I didn't tell her the truth. And obviously that was the window of truth, and I didn't tell it. A couple of weeks went by, and then my mum started to notice more and more things had gone missing. And then literally knock, knock, knock at the door. The police were there. My mum was there. My brother was there. My sister was there. And they were just absolutely gobsmacked at what I'd done and how I'd done it. And for me, that was the point in my life when I absolutely lost complete respect from my mum, my brother and my sister, and they literally didn't want anything to do with me. Now, I remember feeling really low, and I remember just being on my friend's sofa, smoking a spliff, eating a bowl of cereal at 4 p.m, just completely away with the fairies. And that's what I was.
Yeah.
Now, the turning point was this. So I met a guy in Northampton this is 2011. So I met a guy in like 2009, and he messaged me on Facebook completely out of the blue. And he said to me, "Celestia, I remember you telling me your dad was a property developer. Do you have any bed sits going in Leicester?" And I said, "Do you know what? There's actually a room below me. I could have a word with him," because my dad was the only person at this point that was kind of there for me in some way, shape or form, but not much, but enough for a little tiny safety blanket, just a little bit. And I said to my dad, could this guy have a flat? And my dad said, yeah, we can sort it out. And he connected with him. And then very, very miraculously, this guy just moved in. Now, I looked out the window. I remember him walking up to the window, and I just thought, yeah, he's a good looking guy. And he looks, you know what I mean? Looks like a nice guy. And as he came in, we had a good chat. And then as the weeks went by, I would go and knock on his door, and I would try and make him do drugs. I would try and make him steal. I would try and bring him into my world. And what I realized as the months went by is that his mindset was already set.
Yeah.
And whatever I tried to make him do, he wasn't following my path. So we started off just literally by like walking to the park together and going around my dad's, cooking my dad meals, and just doing some very normal things. But to me, these are things that I'd never done before. And after 4 to 6 months, I stopped smoking cigarettes. I stopped doing drugs, and I stopped stealing.
Yeah.
Now, these habits, when I was hanging around with this person who wasn't doing it,
Yeah.
when I quit these habits, I didn't say to myself, I'm going to quit stealing. I just stopped. It just happened. I just didn't focus on these things that were pulling me down. I just put my attention and my focus towards something else, which I enjoyed, which then I managed to slowly transfer my vision in a different way. So when my vision started to transfer and I quit these habits, I then started to realize how damaged my brain was and how damaged my body was from what I'd been doing to it over the past 7 years. And I knew from that point, it's going to take some real grit and determination to build up my personality and to actually get my brain thinking a tool in a normal way. So my dad said to me, look, it'd be really great for you to go to college and do a business course. And it would also be good if we could get you on a gym membership. Now, these are the 2 things that got me on the ladder to my success today. The business course, it was tough. I didn't have my license back at the time. I was walking in the rain, walking in the snow, and I didn't enjoy being on the bus at all. And I really felt like all the information they were giving me in the course, because my brain had been so deteriorated, it was going straight in one ear and straight out the other, because I needed some real personal training to get me up and running. It wasn't a group workshop. That wasn't what I needed. I needed a one-to-one help. So for me, the gym was the best, the number one best thing that ever happened to me. I'd go in the gym, I would put my headphones in, I would go on the running machine, and I just started to slowly build myself up in the gym. And you meet people as well, and you meet good people. You meet people who are there because they want to improve their body, they want to improve themselves. So during that time, I got myself a little bar job, and I did a bit of waitressing, and I really enjoyed doing the bar work and the waitressing because it got me interacting with people. And I felt like, for me, something that I love doing is meeting new people, having great conversation and having a good time. So as I was doing the bar work, this man came in to the bar, and he said, wow, you've got a great personality. Would you be interested in working at Lloyd's Bank? So at the time I was like, Lloyd's Bank? Like, after everything I'd been through, I was like, wow, like this is a great opportunity. So I went along for the interview, and it was a 3-stage process. And when I got to the 3rd process, they said, you've got the job. And I was like, wow, like I've got the job at a bank. This is incredible. So I said to my dad, who at the time, he was in his late 70s. I said to him, Dad, I've got this form here that I have to send back, and it says, do you have a criminal record? And my dad was like, do you know what? Everything you've done, it's all in the past now. We're overcoming it. Just write no on the form and everything will be fine. So that's what I did. I wrote no on the form. Now, 3 weeks into the job role, standing there with my grey suit skirt on, feeling like I'm actually doing something with my life, 3 men with samurai swords broke into the bank and robbed £80,000 out of the bank. Now you can imagine it was scary, and it was at 9 o'clock. It was right at 9 o'clock in the morning. They came through just as we opened the doors, and it was in quite a sort of a rough area in Leicester. So like it was quite scary. Everyone just had to back away, because when they come through, you just literally have to put yourself either out the back or away from the danger.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Samurai swords.
Yeah, three men with masks as well. It was absolutely nuts.
Oh, wow.
It was a time when then this happened. So the police looked into everybody's records, and then they realised I've had a community service and I've also been done drink driving. Working for a bank, you can't have a criminal record. So from that moment, I got put on disciplinary, and in that moment of my life, I thought that I might have been able to keep the job. I actually thought that for some weird reason. But as the weeks went on, I then got invited back into the bank, and it was so awkward because I was sitting with the lady and the man who put me through the interviews, and they were so angry with me, and they really looked at me like I was a piece of crap on the bottom of their shoe. And in my heart, I knew that I felt like I hadn't done anything wrong, but at the same time, you know what I mean, with my dad's advice, I had done something wrong. So it was really annoying for me. And I remember walking out the bank, looking up to the sky, and I literally just thought, I'm back at square one. And that's how I felt. But the best thing that had come out of it is that my mum, my brother, and my sister had reopened the door to our relationship.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so there was light at the end of the tunnel. Now, also writing on that form, I had to go to court, and I got 6 months disciplinary, that if I did anything wrong within 6 months, then I would have gone to prison for writing no on the application form. So if any of you guys watching ever have an application form, please be completely truthful, honest. And if you need somebody's help, don't just ask one person, ask a few people, because that was the big mistake that I made. Now, even though that all happened, I was still on a journey of self-development. So I went back to working in the bar, and I was right at the end, still kind of doing a bit of the college course right at the end of it. Now, when I was at the college, I met a guy called Marvin, and Marvin was just a happy, outgoing kind of lad who had a great personality. And he came up to me and he said, would you like to be in a famous music video, modeling and dancing? So I was like, okay, that sounds really interesting. I'm not 100% sure, but do you know what? I'm going to try it, and I'm going to go for it. So I went down to the Sugar Hut in Essex, and I threw my hands around in the air like you just don't care. And then I really enjoyed it. And when I came home, a couple of weeks went by, and I got some inboxes on social media saying, I loved your hair, I loved your tattoos, and I think you look great in the video. Now, considering the last 7 years of my life, I've been completely in the wrong crowd, getting a lot of negativity as well with that thrown my way. For the first time in my life, I felt valued. I felt like somebody who I don't know has said something nice about me. And that really, really lit a fire inside of me. And I thought, what can I do next? It's going to make me stand out from the crowd and people are going to say something good about me. So I went on a personal journey, and it started off in modeling, and I would do like fashion modeling, I would do catwalking, all sorts of different creative things to kind of build up my confidence. And as I was posting my modeling images online, my followers started to grow. And after sort of a good year of doing it, there wasn't a lot of money in it. It was more about enjoying it and getting some nice images, but it wasn't a big money maker. So after that, I thought, well, what can I do next that's going to be something good? So I started to do competitions. So I did the British Bikini Championship, which I got second place, which I absolutely loved. I did the Miss Leicester, and that was, again, really good for character building. And I got to meet some amazing girls, and I got fifth place. And my mum and dad turned up at that point, and it was just so beautiful to me standing on the stage in my dress, and my dad and my mum, just, even though they weren't together, they still came to support me together, which I really appreciated. And then I did Miss Gala G Casino, and I also did Miss Midlands UK. So there's 4 competitions that for me is a great character build. It's just such a fantastic thing to do in your lifetime. Now, the third thing I did was TV shows. And at this point, this is when my real awakening started to happen. So this was 4 years ago, the TV shows. This was 4 years ago. So the first time I thought about being on TV, I was like, oh my God, I want to be a TV star, definitely want to be on TV. So I just started applying for everything, you name it, game shows, dating shows, everything. Because there's a website called Star Now, and Star Now, I've had some great opportunities. I've been in the Sun newspaper twice.
Wow.
And I've also been on these TV shows through Star Now that I'm about to tell you about.
Yeah.
So for me, the awakening came as I was applying for these shows. So during that process, I firstly realized that I was a skeleton with 206 bones in my body, which I personally find mesmerizing. We're all here living this human spiritual journey, but underneath is a skeleton. It is just insane if you really think about it. The second thing for me was the fact that the trees are helping us breathe. I think that is a really, really special way to think. If you think that these trees that are dotted all over the world are actually keeping us alive right now,
take it for granted.
100%. It's a very, very unique way of thinking, and it's the way to think. And yeah, people do take it for granted. Nick, you're 100% right. The third thing for me was the fact that there's not millions of people, but there's billions of people. And I think some people, they feel like they're so alone, but how can you be alone in a pool of billions of people? And that really stemmed from going down the motorway, even sitting as a passenger in somebody's car and just looking at all the traffic going by, and you're in that traffic as well, and you're just thinking, wow, like, this is just insane. Like, there's so many people here. And then even just going on an airplane, flying into London and looking over London and then seeing how big the world is, it's just a huge, huge, huge world. And we are just one of the 2 billions of people. And you've got to give yourself some credit sometimes. You know what I mean? So that was the third awakening. And then the fourth awakening, and that was the biggest awakening, was not only the fact that we're on a planet, but the fact that we're on a planet floating in the universe. And that, for me, is what I live for. That thought process is what drives me to do everything I do, and it gives me my wings 24/7. And if I ever feel unconfident, that thought process always, guarantee no matter what happens, it will always ignite that fire. Because we are on a planet floating in the universe, and just because we can't see it physically, if you're connected to the world above you, you know, like, it is real. It's not a myth. It's not something that is a mistake in your mind. It is a real, true, beautiful, very, very magical experience. So them 4 elements together were my awakening, and they did come from spending time alone and going into the countryside, and not only sitting in front of a river, sitting at a park, but also just sitting in my mum's garden at night and looking up. I just think that the sky speaks magic, and you need to always look up, never look down, always look up. Because we live in a materialistic world, and if you're always looking at everything materialistic, then you will get a little bit lost and confused during your journey. So when I started doing the TV shows, the first show that I got was a dating show. Now, I know that we're born naked, and I know somewhere we are actually, if there wasn't anything material, then we would all pretty much be naked. Now, I went on a naked TV show called Naked Attraction on Channel 4. And if you asked me to go on it today, no, I wouldn't. But 4 years ago, the mindset I had and the journey I'd been on led me into that show. Now, when I didn't get any negativity from it, even if there was, I didn't hear it to my ears. But that show then gave me my next opportunity. So my next show was Alan Titchmarsh, which was on Channel 4. And that was an antique show. Now, you can imagine everything I'd done to my mum with the antiques and the stealing. This show wanted me to bring on a guest. So I said to my mum, Mum, do you want to come on this antique show with me? And my mum was like, I will come on the show with you. And that was a healing process for me and my mum. And it was absolutely amazing. We had a right laugh. And she was really into it. She loved it. And my mum was like in her late 60s at the time, and she'd never been on television before. And she really, really appreciated me asking her to be my team member on the show. And literally 2 months later, I got my 3rd TV opportunity, and that was for ITV. And my whole studio was on Channel 5. So when the studio was on Channel 5, I'm going to kind of go into the studio in a second, but when the studio was on Channel 5, my mum got invited onto the show again because they wanted me and my mum. It was called 100% Hotter Than. And it was me and my mum again. So within 3 months, I'd got my mum on TV twice. She'd never done it before. So it was a really, really cool experience. Now, the last show that we and my mum went on, that was later on down the line. That was later on, just in case you thought, because I mentioned the word studio.